Hello and welcome to episode 140 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is April 25th, 2022. Today I'm wearing one of my three Viajantes. The Viajante is a pattern by Martina Behm. I think it's one of her most knit and most loved pattern, I would think. Maybe I'm biased because my sister keeps knitting them all the time, so it feels like it's a very popular pattern. I have knit two complete ones, and I own a third one, but most of that was knit by my sister, and I only knitted the lace edging, and that's very small too. I've worn that probably twice on the podcast, so you probably have seen it. But this is the second Viajante that I knit. I've worn that before on the podcast, but that's quite a long time ago. And it's a very special one. So I used very special yarns. My sister and I went to a yarn festival years ago when they were still happening. And we came to that booth where they sold yarn that has been, how do you say, plant dyed, so naturally dyed, so they weren't using any like chemical dyes but only natural stuff. And that's where I bought the slightly darker yarn and one of the lighter yarns. So one of the lighter yarn is a pure silk yarn and the slightly darker one is a pure wool yarn. I think they were dyed with the same plant, but because of the different material, the colors came out slightly different. And then at another booth, we got some mohair silk yarn. And I'm trying to show you. So for the edging, I crocheted around the upper opening with the mohair silk yarn, and I knit the beginning triangle that you start with when you knit a Viajante. I knit that completely out of the silk yarn. So the garter stitch bit is pure silk, then the outer edging is mohair silk, and then for the main body of the shawl I use the three yarns and changing the yarn every round. So it's one round of the wool yarn, one round of the silk yarn, and then one round of the mohair silk yarn. Yeah, that's what I did. And the mohair was just a 25 gram. I think it was just 25 grams. And then the other two yarns were 100 gram. But the silk had more yardage on the skein. That's why I used it for the beginning. And then I used the mohair until it ran out. At some point, it was just there was no more left. And then, so the last bit should just be the the silk and the wool yarn, and then the lower edging I did with just the silk again, and I put beads into the lace pattern. So the lace pattern is not as written in the Viajante pattern. The first Viajante I knit, I did the lace pattern that was in the pattern. But for the other Viajantes, for this one and the other one where I knit a lace pattern, I chose a different lace pattern just to mix things up a little bit. And all three of them have beads in the edging because I just love to use them. I love the way they look, and I like the bit of weight they give to the knitted piece. So for this one, I used clear beads, so they're almost invisible, but they are not like normal round beads, but they sort of the shape is a bit like it's not symmetrical, so I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but it's also very difficult to show. But I think you can see the light sort of reflecting off of these beads. So there are fewer in the beginning of the lace section, and then towards the end, I put them into every round. So it's really hard to show on camera, but especially when I'm outside and the sunlight hits them, they sparkle, and I just love the way they look. So they are I put them throughout the lace edging. And just in case you're not familiar with the Viajante, it sort of looks like a triangular shawl, which, as I said, starts off with this triangle, and then you slowly increase your stitches, and then at the end you can put a lace pattern. And the funny thing about it is it's knit in the round, so it's a double layer if you wear it like as a shawl like that. But being knit in the round, you can actually wear it like a cowl or like a poncho. So riding the bike this morning, I put it over my head like this and then pulled this around. I can wear it like this, and then it can't fall off. But you could also pull it down and just have another layer on top of whatever you're wearing, especially in summer. If I'm just wearing a little t-shirt or a top or something and it gets a bit cooler, I can wear it like this, and it's almost like a pullover or a not like a jacket, but just another layer that you can put on top very easily, and you can style it different ways. Yeah, so that's my very special, lots of silk Viajante, and that's the granny square pullover I'm wearing today. I was inspired by a pattern in a crochet book, but the square in the book was crocheted a little different. I just used the very plain and simple granny square pattern, and I crocheted 2 huge squares, one for the front, one for the back, and then I crocheted 2 fairly small squares for the sleeves. I would have liked the sleeves to be a tiny bit wider, but then I would have had to use another ball of yarn, and I used up almost exactly 4 skeins of opal sock yarn, and I thought that is quite enough. So, and they're not too tight, especially as the front and back are so wide. The sleeve doesn't go up or doesn't go up my arm the whole way, so it only starts down here, and that's okay. But that's also the reason they're not longer. If I had made them a bit wider, they would automatically have been a bit longer. But that's okay, I love it. I love the colour. It was the Fairy Tale series by Opal, and yeah, it's a crochet boxy shaped sweater. I crocheted the whole thing together, so I didn't have to sew anything. But with the last round of all the pieces, I crocheted directly onto the other pieces, so I didn't have to sew anything, and I kept the side seam open for just a little bit. Yeah, really happy with how that looks, and especially how it wears. It's very comfortable, it's very wide. Yeah, really happy with my huge square pullover. Yeah, so much for what I'm wearing. Then on to my finished objects. I have one finished object, which is also one of my new cast-ons. So I started and finished it last week, and it's of course my pair of Sock Madness socks. I think this year this was the second pattern that dropped on a Tuesday, and as I always record on a Monday, that has meant that I spent most of the week just knitting this pair of socks. So the pattern dropped Tuesday afternoon, so I had Monday night and Tuesday morning to knit on some other things, and then most of last week was spent knitting these socks. So the pattern is called Cably Wably by Liz Sedmak. And yeah, I first thought it's Cably Wobbly. It's these kind of wobbly cables, but cable is really the main feature in these socks. Just a few words about Liz Sedmak. She's a designer I hadn't heard of before, but she has designed other socks before, and she also designs squares that you can knit into blankets, and then you can donate those blankets if you want to, and all the proceeds from her designs, when you buy them, she all donates them to a special donation who give blankets to kids in hospital or other special needs. So look up her page and think about getting some of her patterns. They are beautiful, they're well written, and lots of fun. She also designed a blanket square with this pattern. I think that's even for free. Of course, you can't get the sock pattern yet because it's part of the Sock Madness, but I'm pretty sure you can get it once the Sock Madness is over. So these socks start at the toe, so they knit toe up, and you start with the pattern straight from the beginning, and then you have two different kinds of cables, a 2-stitch and a 3-stitch cable, and you cable them in different intervals, and then you have sometimes you have a knit stitch in between, sometimes you don't, so you have to pay attention quite a bit. And then at a certain point you start with the increases for the heel. And the thing is, I usually just knit the minimum requirement for the Sock Madness. First of all, because I don't have big feet and they usually end up too big anyway, so I don't have to knit more than they call for. And that's the same, I did the same for these socks, so I just knit the minimum, I think it was 48 rounds that we had to knit before we start the increases. And then I knit the heel and then I tried them on and they fit me perfectly. It's the first pair of Sock Madness socks that I can wear without having to change anything. And I was pretty sure I wouldn't change anything with these because they knit toe up. It's really difficult to shorten them afterwards. So I was quite thrilled that I can wear them just the way they are. So once we finished the increases, we knit the heel sideways. So that's quite a fun thing to do. I've never done that before. I've never seen it before. But you start knitting your stitches sideways. You eat up all the stitches you had for the sole of the foot, and then once that's done, we had to pick up stitches from the upper edge, and then it's the same kind of pattern up to here, and then we had to cast on stitches and then knit sideways, eating up all the stitches we had on the needle until we got to here. Then we had to graft the stitches together, then again pick up stitches, knit the ribbing, and then we had to do a sewn bind off. Yeah, so it's not a normal cast off, but we had to sew them off, and it's Elizabeth Zimmerman's way of sewing off the stitches. I've always wanted to try that. I've never done it before, so it's quite nice to learn that. For when we when we knit the first row and before we cast off the stitches, we were supposed to put some silky thread in there. For example, floss. Is it dental floss? That was supposed to help with the grafting. It didn't really work very well for me. So with the second sock, I decided not to use the floss and not cast off the stitches, but try and sew together the live stitches with the cast on. And that, I think, worked a lot better, especially after I'd done the first 2/3. I suddenly understood how we were supposed to do it. And so the last bit, this sort of looks really good. So I think if you just look at this bit, you can't really tell where the seam is because I finally understood how to do it. But I was too tired last night to undo this and get it right completely. So this looks good, this doesn't look as good, and this looks even worse. But that's okay. These are my socks. I don't mind. I will love wearing them because they fit me. And yeah, as you can see, this band that's knit sideways looks quite a bit wider than this bit. I did go down a needle size the way it was recommended. And once my leg is in there, it looks absolutely fine. It's not too tight, it's not too wide. So I'm really happy with how that came out. And yeah, really happy with my Sock Madness sock. Anything else I need to say? Well, I used two different colors just for fun. I was asked a lot of times if that was part of the pattern. No, it wasn't. With Sock Madness, you're not allowed to change the color within the sock unless you run out of yarn, but it's always okay to do a different color for the second sock. With most rounds of Sock Madness. Some people do that. With this round, I don't know if I've seen another pair that had different colors except for mine. So, but this is the round that I chose to do that. I think it's the first time I've done that in the Sock Madness, that I've used different colors. But yeah, wanted to do it this time. I chose very light colors because I thought the cables would show a lot better than if I used one of the normal colorful opal yarns. But I realized after I took the pictures that this color is almost too bright to photograph, and I should have dimmed the light a bit before I took the photo so they weren't too clear. I sent my email off anyway. Before I started recording, I didn't have an answer, so we'll see what happens. There were still 5 spots on my team, so unless I made a mistake that I'm not aware of yet, there are good chances that I get onto the next round. But we'll see about that, and I'll let you know next week. Okay, but I don't know if I've mentioned it already, but this is the second time this year that the pattern dropped on a Tuesday. So for me, that's not very convenient. I will show you the few things that I knit before the pattern dropped and the few things I knit in between. And there's another new cast on in there. But I'll start with the socks. I did not knit on the cat socks. Did not put the heels into my thicker socks with the afterthought heel. I did not knit on the Plaid Pocket socks, but I knit a little bit on the on this bonus pattern where I crocheted the heel, and I finished knitting the foot for my size, and now all I need to do is put the toe in, and I could have done that last Monday if I had brought the colourful yarn with me, but I didn't, so I couldn't knit the toe, and by the time I could have picked it up, the Sock Madness pattern dropped. So I decided, as I said, to knit the toe with the same colour that I crocheted the heel, so it should be quite interesting to see how the yarn looks knit up and crocheted up, and a lot of people in the Sock Madness who are working this pattern have chosen to do that, so I'm just one among many, but that's okay. I really like the way those socks looked, so I'm happy to use the same idea. I added just a few rounds on my what's that called in English? I don't know. It's this cowl loop thing that was designed by Bernd Kessler. That's going to go with my Raglano pullover that I finished a while ago. So all I did is add a few rounds. I need to add quite a few more rounds, and then I can do the pattern again, and then I'll have a like a turtleneck thingy or cowl loop that goes with my pullover. And the fun thing about this is that I'm knitting the loop out of the 4-ply yarn, and the pullover was knit with the 6-ply yarn, which might be a sport weight yarn. So maybe the 6-ply is the sport weight and the 8-ply is the DK, the double knit, because I heard somewhere that double knit meant twice the sock weight yarn. So maybe that's the answer. I don't know. But then I have another small project out of sock yarn that I started just before the pattern for the Sock Madness dropped, and I decided to start my pattern battle project. Just in case you hadn't heard it, with the sock yarn company Opal, you can do a subscription thingy where you get 4 parcels of 6 balls of sock yarn every year, and you never know what colors you get. So that's a surprise about that. And with every box of subscription yarn, somebody in the Opal Abo group chooses 3 colors and then lets people vote. And then the color that most people vote for, we do the pattern battle. And that means that everybody who wants to take part needs to knit with this ball, with this color. But everybody who takes part has to do a different pattern than the others. So the first person to sign up with a pattern has the choice of all the patterns, and then everybody coming after that can choose whatever hasn't been taken yet. So I decided to knit a baby jacket, and I am going to do the Showered in Rainbows baby sweater by Stephanie Lockvin out of her book Knit Happy with Self-Striping Yarn. I've knit this jacket before in different colors, but I really enjoyed it and I want to knit it again and again. And my plan was to go through all the sizes to see up to which size I can do the jacket with 100 gram of sock yarn. But because I didn't write down which size I knit the last time, I started the same size this time, so I'll have to do the bigger sizes the next time round. But this is what her jacket looks like, and you start off with one of those side panels, and that's what I did. And this is what it looks like at the moment. So this is the side panel. I started down here with not very many stitches, then you split it in half and then you do one side, then you do the other side, and then I started knitting the sleeve, which is not as per pattern. I was supposed to knit the second side thing and then you can knit front and back, and then you're supposed to knit the sleeve. But what happened is that after I finished this side piece, I realized that I was basically back to the same spot in the yarn, in the color progression, and the second side piece would have looked almost the same as this one. And that's why I decided to first knit the sleeve, so that once the sleeve is finished, I hope I'm in a different place in the color repeat, so that the second side piece will look different. Because that's the funny thing about this jacket, is because you keep changing the directions you knit. So you knit this direction, then you go this way, and you go that way, and then the ribbon goes that way. So that's what makes it so funny. And as you can see, those side pieces look completely different, and that's what I like. So I decided to do it this way. And another interesting thing is when I turn it round and you look at this bit of the side piece, I think you can hardly tell that these colors are in the yarn, because they're inside one of those. Let me see here. You can see the darker colors, just a very thin stripe in the ball, and they're probably a rather thin stripe in socks. But because I'm only knitting, I think it's 16 stitches wide, this piece, the colors are a lot more prominent and the stripe is a lot wider than you would get in a sock. And I really like that. So I think that's really interesting, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the pieces are going to look like. But yeah, last week was difficult. This week I will continue knitting on the baby jacket. So that's the only other new cast on I did last week. I put in a few rounds of sleeve knitting on my, no, not this one, that one, on my black cardigan that will get this beautiful rainbow collar. I added 4 more decreases, so there's only 2 more decreases left to do, and then the sleeve, I will, the sleeve won't be finished, but I will put the stitches on waste yarn so I can add a colourful border once the rest of the jacket is done. So that's that. And then what else did I do? I crocheted. I did the 4th colour on all of my pieces for the little doily that's going into my kitchen. So not a big change, but now I can go ahead with the white and the darkest blue. So that can grow. I did not crochet on my dinosaur blanket stomp. I'm really sad about that. I really wanted to do that, but I think this week I will have to crochet a lot on it, because I was 6 rows short last week. I didn't do any of the 10 rows I was supposed to do last week. Then the 10 rows I'm supposed to do this week. Don't think I will do all the 26 rows this week, but I will try and catch up at least a little. And then I think that's what I did last Monday evening. I put another 2 squares into my memory blanket, and last week I showed you the 2 colors that I knit her socks out of last year, and I have added his socks to the blanket. So those were the 2 colors out of the Memories series by Opal. That's what I knit most of the sock out of. And then she had orange heels and toes, and he had dark grey heels and toes. So those 4 are finished, and then I'm going to continue along this edge of the blanket. Yep. So it's growing. It's not too big yet, but it is growing again, and I'm really happy about that. And then I'm already at the last project, and that's the knit along, and I really did not put a lot of knitting into that last week. I wasn't even sure whether I put any knitting into it, but I tried to compare it to what it looked like in the last video. And I think I knit a few rounds at some point last week. So yeah, this is the second middle piece of the star cushion that we are knitting as a knit along. If you are taking part, if you are knitting one, you're very welcome to show in the discussion thread for the star cushion in the Ravelry group. And if you would rather have an English speaking discussion group, then either open one or let me know so I can do that. But even if you write in English in the German discussion thread, that'd be fine too. Yeah, so that was fairly quick, but yeah, this week I'm pretty sure there won't be any new patterns from the Sock Madness, because even though my group has almost filled all the spots, there are some groups that have only very few spots taken yet. So I think yesterday there were even 2 groups that had nobody in the groups had finished their socks. So I'm pretty sure the round will go till next Tuesday, which will mean I can concentrate on all my other projects this week, and then hopefully the next round won't start on a Tuesday again. I would very much like to show Sock Madness sock as a work in progress for a change, and then show it as a finished project the week after. But anyway, I can't decide, so I'll have to see what happens. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!